In this problem, this is the first vertical motion problem that you have to do. And vertical motion is a little bit more complicated than horizontal because you have to worry about the signs more when you're doing it. When you're doing horizontal motion, the only thing that can be negative is acceleration. But with vertical, more things can be negative, and if you forget one sign, you'll probably get the answer wrong. You may catch those mistakes because let's say if the problem involves a square root and you're getting the square root of a negative number, you know you probably have one of the signs wrong under the square root if you can't get an answer. So in this problem, if I'm looking at it, I have how long will it take? I'm just going to read until I get to a fact. How long will it take? Well, that's a fact. And what would that fact be? That's going to be the time. So the time is going to be my unknown, and I'm going to assume that it's going to be in seconds in this problem. So we have how long will it take a stone to fall 150 meters? So falling 150 meters means its beginning position is there, and its final position is lower than where it started. So what should I write down as my fact for, first of all, what fact is that? That's the displacement, so S, and what should I write as S equal to? Negative 150. So that's negative 150. Now it says, so to fall 150 meters from a bridge, if it is thrown down, and I capitalize down so that you wouldn't overlook it, it's thrown down with an initial speed of 12 meters per second. So I'm not just dropping it where it drops. I'm literally accelerating it in my hand so that it leaves my hand with a speed of 12 meters per second. So what should I write that as a fact? What is it? Original velocity is what? Negative 12 meters per second. Everyone follow that? And now I need a fourth fact. Well, anytime the motion is vertical, what fact do you always know, whether the object is going up or down? Acceleration. So the acceleration is negative 9.8 meters per second squared. And if those are my facts, then the only fact I don't have down is what? Final velocity. So if final velocity is the only fact I don't have down, I want to pick the one formula that doesn't have final velocity. And that's what? S equals VOT plus 1/2 AT squared. Now remember I told you when you're doing a physics problem that I don't want you plugging in numbers early. I don't want anything plugged in until you get to until the equation is rearranged to solve for the unknown. The one exception is that if any of your facts is 0, I let you do that because, for example, in this problem, if the original velocity is 0, so if I just dropped the object instead of throwing it down, if that was 0, then VO would be 0, and that whole term would cancel out. And if that whole term would cancel out, it would make my algebra easier. Some problems you're going to have where the velocity is constant. And if the velocity is constant, the acceleration is 0. And if the acceleration is 0, this whole term will cancel out as 0, making the math much simpler. The problem with this one is that VO isn't 0 and A isn't 0, so we have no other choice. If I want to solve for time directly, I have to use the quadratic formula because time is to the first degree in this term, and it's to the second degree in this term. So I need to take this formula and I need to write it in standard form for a quadratic equation so that I know what my A, my B, and my C are that I can plug into the quadratic formula. So I want it in this form. I want it AX squared plus BX plus C equals 0. That's the form that I want the equation above to be in. Well, my second degree term is right there, so that's going to be in the first position. My first degree term is in the second position. and I'm going to need to move the s to the other side, so they're all on the same side, but if it's a positive s on this side, it'll be a minus s on that side. So when all is said and done, I'm going to have 1/2 at squared, so that's going to be in the first position, plus VOT, so that's going to be in the second position. And like I said, I'm going to move the s to the same side as those two. So if it's a positive s over here, it's a minus s over there. So now all the three terms are on the same side, so the other side equals 0. Does everyone follow that so far? Now, since I can match things up here. I know that my a is going to equal 1/2 the acceleration. Now that a is not the same thing as that a. So I'm not saying that a equals 1/2 a. I'm saying that the generic a, which is the coefficient of my second degree term, is equal to 1/2 the acceleration. I'm saying that my b is equal to VO, and my c will have to equal the minus s because there's a plus in the standard form, so I have to include the minus as part of my value for s. And I want a formula now that has time solved in terms of VO, A, and S. So my next step is to, well, the quadratic formula is x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And that's on your formula fact sheet, so it's not something that you have to memorize. So for me, my variable is not x, it's t. So I'm going to replace the x with t. Let me move this over. I might need more room. So that's going to be t equals, and now every letter there I'm going to be replacing with physics variables. So these are math variables, and I want them to be physics variables. So I'm going to use minus parentheses plus or minus the square root of parentheses squared minus 4 parentheses all over 2 parentheses. And like I said, put the parentheses in first because there's reasons for that. Notice I have a minus that's in the formula, so there's a minus outside the parentheses. Now there might be a minus inside, but if there's a minus inside, it's because of the fact. It's because of what b is. So now, if I go back to here and look to match up my stuff, for a, I'm going to replace it with 1/2 the acceleration. So a goes right here. So I'm going to put 1/2 acceleration there, and I'm going to put 1/2 the acceleration there, because those are the two places where the a is. Now the b is VO. So I'm going to replace the two places where there's a b with VO. So I'm going to put a VO there and a VO there. And the c is minus s. So I'm going to replace the c with minus s. So that goes right there. And now I'd like to neaten that up, eliminate the parentheses that are there, because I want a formula that because I'm actually going to now replace the variables with parentheses so that I can, as placeholders for my values, for these three things. And I don't want you to immediately go now to these. Notice I have not yet plugged in anything, my original facts. I'm still just trying to create the formula. So the result of step 3, when I've really simplified it, is going to be t equals minus VO plus or minus the square root of VO squared. Now, if you look here, there's a minus. Whoops. There's a minus, but there's a minus here. So minus and minus is what? Plus. So there's going to be a plus there. And half of 4 is 2. And the two variables that are left over are A and S. So I'm just going to put those on the end. A, S, and that's all over. Half of 2 is A. So now I have a formula that solves for time in terms of the other variables. So it was a little bit of work because I had to do all this math stuff and this quadratic formula stuff, but now I have a formula that I can just plug in. But the thing about this formula is I'll have people who actually have all the right numbers, they're correct all the way to here, and they're even correct to where they plug in the numbers, and then they don't get the right answer. So when we get to that point, I'm going to go through the steps with your calculator so that you get the right answer. So step 4 is to substitute and solve. So I'm going to have t equals minus VO plus or minus the square root of VO squared plus 2AS all over A. So again, I put all the parentheses in every letter. I don't care what the numbers are yet. I've put the parentheses because those are placeholders for my values. And so now I'm going to put in the numbers. So my VO is negative 12. So I'm going to put in negative 12 right there. And I'm going to put in negative 12 right there. My A is negative 9.8 meters per second squared. So I'm going to put in negative 9.8 meters per second squared there. And I'm going to put it there. And notice I'm not just putting the number, I'm putting the unit. Because this answer has to come out in seconds. Because that's what time is in. So the units should all cancel out and I should get seconds. Now my S is negative 150. So I'm going to put in negative 150. So notice that I have minuses and I have a minus there that's there, but a lot of my, in fact, every one of my facts was negative. So I have them inside, so they're part of the facts, and this is the one that's part of the formula. And I'm going to stop it here and then go through the algebra. But actually, just so that we have it, the final answer for this problem is 4.44 seconds. And now I will show you how to punch this in your calculator so that you don't have step 4, part A, part B, part C, and part D, that you immediately go to that answer.